it's really an extension of the bank rec process. So if something doesn't click right away, it's when Pia shows her part, the bank rec process, I think it'll make a little bit more sense. But we'll go through this, but really there's some kind of setup pieces and some process pieces, and I'll go through those. The example we used was PayPal because that's one I think you guys deal with today, and one that we know we have example files that we have dealt with before from them. We would assume you could get similar statements from your other credit card providers. But what we were dealing with is a file. We shortened this file up quite a bit, but this was an actual PayPal file where we just changed the names and numbers to protect the innocent here. But this would be a file that you would normally get from a provider, from a PayPal. And again, I would assume that you can get a similar CSV from your other settlement or merchant providers. If you notice in here, there's a gross, fee, and net. For this example, we were assuming that PayPal is giving us a net deposit, not a gross deposit, but I can kind of show you either way that you could account for it either way. If your provider gives you a gross deposit, then later comes back and takes fees out of your operating account kind of separately, or if they just give you a net deposit right away, either one can work with this system. So this is the file, like I said, that we kind of used as an input, and for what we're going to show this morning. And then this is the format here, and this is probably not very big. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So this is the PayPal. So we just set this up in this is our bank reconciliation format screen, and we set it up as a comma delimited. Well, I'm sorry, I'm in Cash and Bank here. So in Cash and Bank, we'll start there. So in Cash and Bank, we actually set the PayPal account up as a pseudo bank account, if you will. And if I go in here, the main difference is instead of this going to a cash account, is that we would have this going to some kind of a cash clearing or credit card clearing account. And when you bring your credit card payments in, we would recommend using an account like this as the offset account, not your main operating account. So as each individual credit card payment comes in, you really don't want all that noise in your operating account, because really what's going to hit your operating account at the end of the day is probably a large deposit from your credit card provider, not something that reconciles to all these individual transactions. So by putting all the transactions in a separate D365 bank account, that way we can deal with these a little bit easier and still get the money over to your operating assistant account as a deposit. So we'll back out of here and look at the setup. So this is, again, just part of setup. We'd recommend that payments coming in not go directly to an operating account, would go to a bank account that you set up specifically for your credit card processor. So, and then this is our format screen. So we maybe can bring this up both here. So this is, again, a sample PayPal file that, we got from a customer and changed data, but typically there's a date, a gross amount, whatever, these fields, a lot of fields that really aren't important to the reconciliation process. So our format screen lets you do some mapping with this. So first of all, we tell it there's a header record here that we want to ignore. And then in the field layout, and again, I'll bring this up, we tell it that, where the date is, where the description is. And in this case, we're bringing in the name as the description. You could bring any part of this in as a description, whatever you think would be helpful in the case that something wouldn't reconcile. On the amount field, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have clicked on that. So we're bringing in the amount, we're bringing in the gross amount, and then we mapped this fee column as well. And then what we do as well is, since this line really, if we're going to treat this like a statement, what this line is really missing is a line at the bottom here that says, you know, this is the total fee amount, and, you know, add up the fee, and this is the total deposit amount, and add up the deposit. So that's what this screen here is really providing, is just a way to kind of add these lines on the fly during the import process. So we're telling it generate a fee line and assign it a transaction type, and you'll see in a minute why this transaction type is kind of important. And then some providers, if they do provide a fee column, they provide the fee as a positive amount, but in a fee column. So then you have the option to flip the sign if you need to do that here. Also, we want to generate that deposit line, so that basically that line that would come out of clearing and go into your deposit account. Or probably more likely, when you import your operating system statement, it's a line that would come in from your operating system and push over to this account. So, and we give this one a description and a tran type as well. But again, basically the gist of this is it's trying to add those couple columns at the bottom to make it look more like a statement, you know, a more complete statement, not just, you know, the payment side of things, but the money going back out as well. So one more screen here then. In transaction type setup, and again, Pia will have a little more examples of this, but in her bank rec piece, but per transaction type coming in, we can set up what we want to happen from a accounting standpoint. So fees are typically not something that's going to be in your system already, so we need to account for those fees. So we map it to a bank tran type of fee, and this guy has a main account associated with it. Again, I mean, basically for the setup, we set up a bank account that would be holding all these credit card transactions every day. We set up a field layout that looked like the PayPal file coming in. We set up these couple extra lines that says we want to generate these fees and deposit lines at the bottom. And then now we're just going to drop this in this in our place here. Let me look at this real quick. So in our bank account screen, this is a treasury automation bank account screen. So we have this PayPal, and we're telling it that from a bank rec perspective, it's reading that PayPal format we just mentioned, and it should look for files that are here. So this is where you would drop the files every day, or if you have an automated like FTP download, this is where this is where we drop the files. If those are questions, I still can't hear them. Okay.
I don't think it's a question.
I jeszcze konto pośrednie będzie, nie? Bo u was też teraz bezpośrednio na banku.
So I need to close this file so I can redrop it in. So basically, I'm just dropping this file in where the system would expect it to go. As part of the bank rec setup, you set up a batch job that kind of keeps looking for these files all the time. So something that batch job would just spin and be reading these files. I might have to wait for a minute here for it to grab it. I don't know how long it's set to cycle here on this system. I don't think this is. Just trying to find the batch job so I could speed it up if we need to, but I think it'll probably run before I get a chance to do that. You know the batch job that's just waiting for the batch job to pick it up. It says it should be within a minute, but of course, when you're on a demo, it's always the longest. We got it dropped in. Let's refresh. So you can see it consumed it out of there. So now we're going to go into the bank reconciliation process. And again, drill into this a little bit, but this is our bank reconciliation screen. So if we pull up the PayPal bank, is that screen big enough, by the way, Jonas? Is that showing up, or do I need to make that a little larger?
Yeah, no, it looks good for me.
Okay. So this guy came in, and there's a couple things. I mean, one, it did go through and we put these payments in the system, just like, a credit card feed or something would have put the payments in the system. So these, of course, just matched to all the transactions. So if we look at any one of these, lines, it'll show you which line it matched to. This is the transaction coming in. This is the one that was in that, that cash and bank subledger. But the more important thing is kind of at the bottom. You can see that like the fees, we wanted to account for those fees. So this line here, it created a general journal upon import. And if we go to we can navigate from here to the general journal that it created and see that it created a line and import to that fee account as soon as it gets to here. So a ledger entry got made and posted automatically upon import to the credit card fees. And typically I would think that this deposit line got generated. Typically I would think this line is getting matched. In this case, that's what we did. We matched it to something that was pushed over from the operating account. It depends really on which one you kind of work with first. If you want this to push over to the from the credit card reconciliation, you want that to drive what gets put into the operating account. You can set up a rule just like we did for this fee. Again, typically, I think you'd want to, from your operating system account, that has the real deposit, that would push this amount over here, and the credit card statement would just simply try to match to it. So that is the setup and the process really of the credit card reconciliation. If for some reason one of these didn't match, again, without stealing too much of Pia's thunder here, you go into the transaction reconciliation screen and you could work through things that didn't match or try to find things that didn't match by looking for additional transactions here, or even creating general journal entries down here if you needed to create them. But that is the kind of how we would handle the credit card reconciliation. And again, this is all kind of done in a cash and bank account, but it's a cash and bank account that's tied to a credit card clearing. So it's really not affecting your ledger cash accounts until you get the true deposit in. So there's questions around that process?
No. It looks like it should.
Yeah.
Is that like it would handle your need, or you have concerns about whether it would handle what you're trying to accomplish?
No, we are happy. Smiling.
I just have one question. That was about the folder where the file belongs to. Was that a global setup or for one? Can you show it again?
Yep. So per bank account here. No, that's let me go. Yep, I know what you're talking about. So in our screen here, we have a bank account. This is kind of a shadow table, if you will, to the regular bank account screen, but you can see this is a demo box. We have lots and lots of banks, but you tell it per bank account where it's looking for the file. So,
but I don't give it the complete file name. I just need to have a folder per bank account.
Correct. We just scan this folder for any new entries, and if you look at this This batch job here, where this guy. Oh. Yep, we will fix that. That'll make for a short demo. So this communication job you set up, basically it's just a batch job and you determine the interval that it runs at. You know, for a demo box, we have it set to run every couple minutes. In a production system, you'd probably have it set, you know, every 15 minutes or something like that. But this batch job goes through every bank account and looks for all these distinct folders and looks for activity in those folders.
I would like to avoid distinct folders, because if we pick up the files from the bank, we need to identify the bank account, but that might be easy. I don't know. And place it in then we need a mapping to 200 or whatever number of folders, and then we import it again and we have the same mapping. A lot of folders. Do we need that? Can't we do that on
Yes, you can. Yes,
names on the files or something like that instead?
You can set up an organization hierarchy, and for external bank accounts, if you have a hierarchy and you include all your legal entities, it will figure out where the bank account is located and it will import the statement. So you can have one folder for external bank account. Chuck, I don't know if it is the same with the credit card.
Yes, if there's something in the credit card. The thing with the credit card is what we saw in a little bit of the preliminary discovery is like everyone has a different format to it.
Yeah, and you need to read some of that need to be global for all the credit card, whatever, to identify something. Yes.
Yeah, so
what is the identifier, Chuck, in the file? What is the identifier that actually tells us which legal entity we want to hit and which
bank account?
Are you looking at the merchant ID?
So yeah, so we have what it's called, you know, right here is an alternate bank account, or when you set these up to begin with, you know, we just put a number in here, but you could put in like the merchant account in here and then map that merchant account. If that is one of the columns on the import, you can map that merchant account column to kind of look for this. But again,
wouldn't that be a good structure actually?
Well,
so you have one merchant ID.
Yeah, so if you have multiple, yes, so if you have multiple legal entities all getting PayPal files, then yes, it can sort that out. So everybody, you wouldn't need one like for if all your legal entities had separate PayPal accounts, you would not need separate directories for that. But if you had a PayPal and then you had a different credit card provider that had a whole different format, you would need different directories for that.
Yeah.
But to identify the content of the files, you need to have the merchant ID as the first column, first fields in the CSV
because
files.
the merchant ID is mapped to a bank account.
Yes.
Or more than one.
Or more than one. Yeah.
Because currency.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to read the first part of the content to identify that.
Again, this is a sample file we got in, so if there's something in here that would help us identify the bank account that it goes to, we can certainly map that. But I mean, it has to be coming in this, you know, whatever your provider is giving you, there has to be some kind of identifier that helps us do that.
Yeah.
Merchant ID.
Yeah.
PayPal skal have en, og nogle andre skal have en anden. Så flytter vi rundt på det.
And I know that, you know, working with other providers, you know, some of them are able to reach back out to their gateway or whatever and have them tweak this format to, you know, to provide, you know, data they want or whatever. So I know some of the credit card providers are more flexible than others as to how this file can look. But again, if there's an identifier in here that helps us get it to the right merchant account, then we can read that and map it. I didn't see one of those in this example we had from a customer, but if there's something in there that's mappable, then yes. Back to that screen here. So, I mean, there's a field layout. We didn't map one, but there is an account number basically that we can map to, and then it sorts out the right accounts to the right and in your normal bank statement, that's how you drop you normally drop a single file for, 1 to 100 or however many bank accounts, and we sort them all out to the right legal entities and to the right, to the right bank account. We'd have to kind of, again, look at your individual per credit card, per provider files that come in and try to map those out. The bank accounts themselves, they're pretty consistent. As Jonas said earlier, there's MT940 in the CAMTs and, and a few other standard ones in US and elsewhere. But with the credit card providers, there's as many formats as there are providers. So it's a little, trickier to map those. You got to kind of work with each one.
Yeah, the list that we've provided, have you seen that of the current PSPs we have, like PayPal, like Ideal, PayZero, for instance? Have you seen that list?
We've seen your formats. We had a meeting on some of those. If they are multi-line files, we'd have to kind of work with this to get those to map. I mean, this is kind of expecting a pretty straightforward file. What we don't know, again, is kind of working with each provider is, can we get a more simplified CSV that looks like this? So it's kind of one line per transaction. A lot of providers have multiple formats you can download. Most of the providers we have worked with will provide a CSV that's kind of a one-line CSV, because a lot of them are working with other people who want to do direct imports as well.
My question was just simply to say, yes, Ideal, we have done something with them before.
Ideal.
That was more the question.
Oh no, yeah, I have not done one for Ideal, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, with the credit card providers, that's just a lot more parties involved. So there's, quite a few that we've probably not dealt with before, but on the ones we've worked with, we've been able to get files that we're able to read. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of getting it done. From your point of view.
It's a matter of looking at your specific providers and talking with them as to what they can provide us, and then looking at what we can interpret out of that file. And even things like you mentioned, like if they're not putting a merchant ID, can they put that as one of the columns or something like that?
Yeah, or file name or whatever. But your tool can basically map whatever information we have in there in different ways.
It's, again, the key thing is there that they're providing some key pieces of information. I mean, this is kind of the minimum pieces. I mean, a date and a transaction is something. In this particular column, I use that like express checkout column to map as a transaction type, just so that I could have some place to land a transaction type. But yeah, on each one of these, it's kind of working with what data we have and trying to figure out what to do with them. Some of these will have like a sale refund column here, and we work with that one because the refunds are usually like the signs are flipped. So we can use the refund as like almost like a debit credit indicator. I've seen ones that have all positive fees and we need to flip the sign. I see ones that have all positive amounts, but it'll have like sale and refund here. And then they expect you to flip the sign based on the type that comes in. So we've seen quite a variety of types of files come in.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
One other question?
Yep.
When you did the posting to Dynamics, you just showed a general journal, but I guess you can easily map other journal types. So if we want one for PayPal and we want one for Ideal and one for PayZero, then you can hit different journal types, so we can split the transactions inside Dynamics, right?
Yeah, I mean, whatever's feeding your credit card transactions in the first place would need to figure that out, right? But then on the, so we can, let me go to that bank account setup screen again.
We would probably go for at least one per PSP, you would say. One journal type per PSP to separate it, so we can easily find transactions if we need to.
Okay.
We currently can't do that, Chuck.
Yeah,
it's set up on the parameters only.
Yeah, so we have a setting like that at the legal entity, but we do not have override. We override a lot of parameters here. I don't see where we override that particular one. So that would have to be an enhancement we make that would allow you to override that at this level.
Okay. Could we get a note of that?
Yep.
Someone? It's just because we have multiple PSPs.
And not select
Yeah.
the voucher type.
But why?
That was the answer.
You cannot have you set up one voucher type in the parameters. This was what
You
the
just call that credit
Yes,
cards,
yeah.
basically.
yes,
So you can't see PayPal or Euro or whatever.
unless we can set text or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could give it a different bank transaction type or something like that to identify it. But right now, as Pia said, at this level, we let you identify the journals wherever it's at here up
On
top.
the third column from the left.
Yeah,